Welcome back to the channel. This is the action figure grader, and you'll have to excuse the B-Team thumbnail for this video. The thumbnail software that I use to make my thumbnails for my YouTube channel just had an update yesterday, and it's terrible. I can't use it. I'm technologically deficient. I'm like a fish out of water, man. So this is the best I could come up with for this video. But I've got some loose figures, some 12-inch figures, as well as some 3 3/4-inch vintage figures, and some vehicles, playsets, things like that. So just kind of a loose, complete video, so to speak. First one up, we've got a Luke Skywalker 12-inch. It looked to be in pretty good condition, complete with the grappling hook. That one sold at a buy it now for $105. Here was a Stormtrooper. I almost sent this out to my Patreon supporters, but I decided not to because it had a little stain right there on the front of the chest. And it was an auction. But I figured, like, well, if I'm going to send one of these out, I'll try and find one that's a little cleaner. Maybe that stain pops off of the armor, or, you know, rubs off of the armor, but the rest of it looks so clean. It's a shame it had that little yellowing stain there on the chest. That one still sold at an auction for $176. And there you go for the 12-inch Stormtrooper. And then here was Ben Kenobi. Here was another one that looked really clean. It looks pretty much brand new. I mean, it was pretty flawless. And that one sold in a buy it now situation for $200 US. So I take it back. Look, it's got some rubs on the hand there. Look at the hand rub. How is it minty? This guy describes this thing as minty. It's got a hand rub, man. At least he actually talked about it and said it was. But, you know, maybe it comes off. I don't know. But you can't call that minty. I'm sorry. Just because it's got a big rub from the lightsaber. But still sold for $200. Next up, we've got a double telescoping lightsaber Luke Farm Boy. You can see the end of the lightsaber had been chewed on by little Timmy because he didn't have his blankie with him at the right time. So he decided to chew on the end of his double telescoping lightsaber. Bad choice, buddy. Bad choice, because that thing would be worth a lot more if it wasn't so chewed up. But it's still sold in an auction from a trusted seller. I bought from this seller before, a really good seller. $835. And that's probably about right, to be honest with you. I think I might have had this in a what to buy video. I can't remember. Had a hand rub on the left hand, a little bit of eyebrow rub, it looks like, and then obviously some discoloration and issue with the end of the lightsaber. But $835 is probably about right. You know, this is probably like a 75 grade at best. And, you know, we've seen some 80s go for $1,200 to $1,300 already graded. So this to me feels like the right price. About $800 or $900 was about my target. Next up, I want to talk about this one. Okay, so 5 Idiots Talking Toys does a Patreon alert like mine. And because I helped their channel by being a Patreon supporter, why, I have no idea, because Chris from Rogue 5 canceled his membership to me. But I was going to cancel mine, but I just thought that would be rude. So I decided to continue to keep, you know, sponsoring Rogue 5 and 5 Idiots Talking Toys. Anyway, they have a buy it now alert, and they sent this one out. And they said it's a White Arms Lobot. And this, again, is from the same seller. It's a trusted seller. And if you look at it, it does look white. Okay, so he put it next to another example of Lobot, the standard kind of light yellow blouse, pirate's blouse, like Jerry Seinfeld had in that one episode, the pirate shirt. But this one looks white, okay? And so Star Wars Daddy, who's a buddy of mine and a fellow YouTuber and a Patreon supporter, he said, hey, is this a legitimate variant? And I said, no, this is not a legitimate variant. This is a discolored or degraded Lobot, in my opinion. Okay, now it's very uniform in terms of how degraded the yellow is. Okay, you can see how it's fairly uniform, but it's got spots here and there. You can see a spot on the arm there. And, you know, it looks like it's almost red in certain spots. It could be just reflection from the little base he's using. But to me, I don't think that this is a legit variant. I've never seen it labeled White Arms Lobot before. It's still sold for $77. So I get so exhausted talking about variants or versus degradation. I'm going on record saying that this is degradation. Okay, you know, it's kind of like the orange cape squid head. There's no orange cape squid head. It's just a degraded squid head cape. from brown to orange, and it's very uniform. And those still go for $150 or $170. So I think this is the same case. Now, because it's so uniform, it's a really cool thing to have. Now, if you're a Lobot collector, God forbid, if you collect action figures that look like me, especially the hair, I don't know why you'd want to have a degraded Lobot, but it is pretty uniform, so I get it. But I just want to go on record that I think the White Arms Lobot is just degradation. It's not like some kind of cool factory, error or some kind of, variant. So that's my personal opinion on it. Next up, we've got a R2D2 Sensor scope, and it looked pretty minty. The guy says it's minty. It looks pretty good. It's got one little scuff there on the sticker on the front. It's hard to tell when on R2D2s, when somebody's got it for sale, whether the spots that you see in the dome are reflections from, the background, reflecting onto the dome, or what. This one was a no COO variant, so that one adds a little bit more mystique and aura to it because it's harder to find the no COO. But it's sold for almost $100. So that number seems high to me, just because it's not perfect. It's got some issues with the legs. The legs look like they've got some discoloration there, and obviously the scuff on the sticker at minimum, and potentially wear on the dome, but it's hard to tell. But it's still sold in an auction for $100. So good photos go a long way if you're a seller for some of these figures. Here was a Luke Skywalker Taiwan, and it was advertised as mint with the little inner tray still. And it looks pretty mint to me. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it. Nose rub, no wear on the hand. And it had, the cape was still in its little kind of binder. So nice presentation by the seller on this one. That one sold for $180. So that, for a Luke Jedi that looks super clean like this, based on these photos, I would have to say it does look pretty mint. I could see paying that much. It's a pretty nice one. And next up, we've got some Last 17 before we dig into some figures some vehicles and play sets and things like that. Here was a baggie for Barada. This would obviously come from the Jabba the Hutt Dungeon playset version 2 that included EV-99 and a Monomon. So this is that baggie that came in that. So that's a nice baggie. $220 on that one. Next up is EV-99 with the coin. $400 on that one. I found another one that was $420. Best offer accepted. So EV-99 continues to be pretty expensive. So that's one I don't have in my collection. I probably will aim to get one of these loose graded at some point this year because I'm starting to run out of space. Chris W. over at Rogue 5 Toys is taking all my money. I've got to stop buying stuff from his Jackpot Haul Part 2, The Return of the Jackpot, if you were on our live stream. So he's been selling those mint on cards fast and furious. He just got in his second batch, which I would think by the time this video airs in early May that everything will be up and for sale, if not sold by then. So sales are brisk. Make sure to go check out Rogue 5 Toys on Facebook. All right, I've got this Yakface, and then I've got another seller that listed 3 Yakfaces in an auction. And this one looked pretty clean. It wasn't perfect, but it looked pretty close to perfect. It had maybe one little issue on his jacket there at the shoulder. There's one little nick there. But otherwise, pretty clean example of Yakface. That one sold for £400, which is almost $500 US. And then here is the lot of 3 Yakfaces that this seller sold in an auction over in the UK. And again, none of them were perfect, but they all had some issues with it, but it's pretty cool to see 3 of them all get sold together. I seem to remember maybe 6 or 9 months ago, somebody sold 5 of them together in an auction, and those went for like $1,600. And we got this lot of 3 that sold for £925, which is $1,150 US. Now, again, they weren't perfect. You can see this one on the far left had quite a bit of paint wear to it on the feet as well as the hands. This one had some wear to the feet and the hands. And then the far right one had some minor wear to the feet and the hands. So none of them were perfect. They had some torso discoloration. I do think it's interesting looking from left to right on these. And this is a good thing to look out for if you're looking for a loose, complete Yakface, is that sometimes either because of photo touch-ups and brightening or because maybe you don't think about it, but the shirt on Yakface does discolor. It does turn yellow. And this is a good example of that. This one's got very faint yellowing. The middle one has more moderate yellowing. And then the far right one is like Goldilocks and the Three Bears or whatever it is. You know, the porridge is too cold. The porridge is just right for the middle one. And then the far right, it's way too hot. So, you know, that one's got way, you know, much more discoloration than the other two. I would say the middle one is probably the best. And then the far left one, I don't know. The far left one looks like it's got the most, the middling discoloration. The middle one is probably okay, you know, maybe light discoloration. And then obviously the far right one, you can see the obvious color difference between his chest and then the sleeves. So just be on the lookout for that, because a lot of people don't realize that. And I oftentimes do see Yakfaces sell in buy it now situations for like $650, $700. And you don't want to pay that unless you're paying for a graded one, in my opinion. And if you don't collect graded stuff, then be careful with your money. You know, $300 to $400 should buy you a pretty nice one. I mean, you know, Charles over at 5 Idiots Talking Toys and Rogue 5 Toys, he sold a pretty nice one on Rogue 5 for like $400, and it was much nicer than any of these three. So just keep that in mind. Next up, this seller had some nice droids and Ewoks figures that sold at auction. First is Jord Dut with the coin. That one sold for $77. Next up is Thal Jobin with what appears to be the correct blaster, the black blaster. That one was $152.50. And then we had Uncle Gundy. Uncle Gundy continues to go up in price. He's one that's really jumped a lot lately. We saw an AFA 85 example that sold for like $360 or something like that. This one sold for $222.50 with a coin. Here is the Logray from the Ewok series. He's always been pretty expensive. He's got the same face that I had circa 2015 when I was still drinking 50 beers a day. That's about what I look like. And I was unshaven and I didn't shower. So Logray and I are kindred spirits pre-sobriety. That one sold for $162.50. And then we had King Gornish. King Gornish looks like Chris W. when his wife goes to work and leaves him with 3 kids and he's trying to sell toys on Rogue 5. He gets a little grumpy. If you message him at the wrong time, it's not good. Some of the responses I get. A lot of curse words. Chris, do you kiss your mother with that mouth? Because you curse at me a lot when I reach out to you by private message on Facebook when your kids are driving you nuts. And this is the kind of face you have. So that one sold for $125. Next up, we've got some play sets and vehicles that sold. First is a Creature Cantina playset, used sticker sheet, but the box with the instructions. Pretty nice example. That one sold down in Australia for $435 Australian dollars, which is $280 US dollars. Next up is the Landspeeder. Now, this is an interesting one because it was loose graded inside the box, loose with box. So a loose graded score of 85 from CAS, but it was encased inside the box. So I don't know if it had the insert or the instruction sheet or what. Clearly, it was not qualified grade. It was just loose graded. So that's the first time I've ever seen something like that. To me, I don't know why you'd get a loose Landspeeder graded and then just have it graded inside the box, because you can't see it, but that's just me. But that sold for $475. Next up, we had the Falcon in the Star Wars packaging with a used sticker sheet and the instruction sheet. Pretty nice looking box, really, for how old that is. That sold for $700. And then here is the Imperial TIE Fighter, unused contents with a pretty white looking original TIE Fighter. Got the insert, everything was in really good shape on this one. So I'm not surprised that this one sold for so much, because this one would be a good example where you could send it in for qualified grading, unused contents with either AFA or CAS. So very nice example there. The instruction sheet did have some yellowing going on, so I don't know how that affects the grade. The box itself, though, was in really good shape. You know, that's a really nice box. This is the second iteration without the long play logo on the box, I think. Yeah, so this one did not have the long play logo. So this one probably came out 78, 79 time frame. But very nice to have that sticker sheet to be in that good a condition. $525 on that one. And then finally, this Ewok Battle Wagon. Look how clean this thing is. This is another testament to really good photos, because good photos go a long way. And it was advertised as complete and in near mint condition, and it looks that way to me. That one sold for $520 in an auction, 17 bids on that plus $20 shipping. So about $550 took home a used complete Ewok Battle Wagon. Anyway, just some recent sales that I kind of wanted to go through. I hope you enjoyed this look. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.